All right, everybody. So welcome to Uncharted. Today we are going to explore a fun topic, which my mentor actually sent a really great email out about last week, and it just prompted me to think, this is so cool. I'm having so many insights about this. Why don't we bring it into a forum where we can have a deeper discussion? So I shared that in the group. I'm actually going to read that email again because I think it's just so powerful and it'll be a great place for us to start. It's just like hearing that and then digging into a conversation about it. But as per always, we'll start with a little grounding exercise and just kind of get ourselves feeling grounded in the room and present with each other, and then we'll go from there. So just get yourself into a comfortable position and we will go ahead with this. And if you can, if you're just in listen only mode, it's all good. But if you can't if you're not in a safe place to close your eyes or whatever, obviously don't do that. So just start to get comfortable. And of course, today's grounding exercise is going to be in line with the theme of the day of circumstances and experience. So I'm going to invite you to just begin to notice your breath. Maybe begin to bring some awareness to your circumstances. What is the solid reality that you find yourself in right now? Perhaps it could be, I'm sitting in a chair. Or it's the middle of my workday. Just noticing the things that are solid around you. Maybe one of those things is, I live inside a body that breathes itself. Allowing this noticing to be very gentle. Less of a seeking out of circumstances and more of a gentle nod to what is. Allowing your breath to be the anchor. It keeps you present in the exploration. Next, as you continue to breathe, allow yourself to become aware of your experience. The feeling, thinking, fluid state that ebbs and flows around your circumstance. This might include how you're feeling about your circumstance or the circumstance, without letting yourself get too heady. Simply notice. Is the circumstance and the experience obviously two separate things? Or do they sometimes dance so closely that it's hard to tell them apart? Rest in that part of you that sees circumstance and sees experience. Part of you that observes. Part of you that just is. Now allow yourself to release that exploration and simply return to the breath. Allowing the breath to cleanse you and make space for new, fresh thought. Slowly beginning to make your way back into the room. Hello, everyone. So I am going to take a moment to read something to you. Some of you may have already read it, but I guarantee you that you will hear something new and fresh when you hear it this time, because that's just how we work. So this was written by Michael Neal on the topic of circumstances and experience. So at the heart of the inside-out understanding is the distinction between the domain of circumstances and the domain of experience. Circumstance, as I'm using the word here, are what we would see if we watched an unedited video of a situation. Experience is our moment-to-moment felt reality. While we all use words in slightly different ways, here are a few examples of things that are often talked about as being synonymous with a closer look, can be seen as belonging to these different domains. So in the domain of circumstances, we may see danger, where in the domain of experience, fear. Pain in circumstance versus suffering in experience. Being overloaded as a circumstance, feeling overwhelmed as an experience. Going bankrupt, circumstance, feeling like a failure, experience. Reaching a goal, circumstance, feeling successful, experience. Circumstances have a certain solidity and consistency to them. Whatever we may believe metaphysically about the nature of the universe, if you fall over and land on your face, it's probably going to hurt. But there are an infinite number of experiences we can have of that one event. We might be angry at whatever condition we think contributed to our falling over. We might be worried about whether or not we broke a bone. We might be embarrassed that someone might have seen us. We might be amused by our clumsiness, or we might be grateful that we're okay. The problem is that if we have these two domains conflated consistently, the problem is that we have these two domains conflated consistently. We treat them as if they are one and the same, as if the experience is an intrinsic part of the circumstance. Being in business for yourself is stressful. Having a job is supposed to come with a feeling of security. People watching you do what you do increases the pressure. We tell ourselves that anyone would feel the way we feel in our situation. Anyone would struggle the way we struggle in our position, or with our personal history, or with whatever the circumstances we find ourselves in are. But while our circumstances are what they are, the domain of experience is infinitely fluid. Everyone's experience of life is constantly changing. One minute we get a compliment and feel on top of the world. The next minute we've convinced ourselves the compliment was insincere. The person must have just wanted something from us, and we're every bit as awful as we always suspected and feared. So the reason that experience is so fluid is because it's spun from an infinitely creative energy that we commonly think of as thought. I use capital T for thought to distinguish it from any of the particular things we think, or the 6,000 plus thoughts that are estimated to pass through our brains on a typical day. Thought is the thread out of which we sew the fabric of our experience. And because our experience is made 100% of this energy and 0% of circumstance, other people, what's happening, what's happened, or what will happen, it's the domain in which we have the greatest opportunity for mastery. Now, mastery is not control. Most people I've met, including authors of books on positive thinking, can't control which thoughts come to mind when, and therefore which experiences they will be having moment to moment. But we do have a lot of say in our experience. We can take accountability for our experience in any moment, which is to say we can stop blaming anything outside of ourselves for how we feel. The cool thing about taking accountability for our experience is that it frees us from the need to try to control our circumstances in order to feel the way we want to feel. If our experience is 100% formed through this creative energy of thought, then taking accountability for that brings us ultimate freedom. If we're willing to own our moment-to-moment experience, there is no circumstance that we need to be frightened of, because a circumstance can't create fear. Only we can. The simple act of taking 100% accountability for our experience gives us an incredible amount of freedom to create and play in the domain of circumstance. We can do what we want to do to improve the world without needing anything to change in order to make ourselves okay. And when we stop trying to fix ourselves by fixing the world, we can see more clearly which bits of the world could actually do with some fixing, and which bits of the world we're actually best placed to do something about. No stress, no pressure, nothing to discourage or disappoint us, just the freedom to play the game of life with the house's money. So I wanted to read that because I feel like it does a really good job of kind of explaining and delineating out, but putting a little more space to the idea between circumstance and experience. And I have to say that even personally, like in theory, I read it and I'm like, oh yeah, of course, there's circumstance and then there's how I feel about it. But the more serious the circumstance looks in my mind's eye, the more difficult it is to see experience as a separate thing. And so part of why I wanted to bring this conversation to the table is because sometimes even taking a circumstance that we don't have a huge amount of emotion around, it's easier to kind of pull that apart a little bit and to find some more space within that to see the difference between the two. So I wanted to just kind of open it up. We didn't officially do introductions here, but let's just do kind of a little round of checking in. And Clara's here. I'm just going to let her in and then I'll explain what we're doing and then we can continue on. Amazing. Hi, Clara. Nice to see you. Welcome. So you came at kind of a perfect time because it was just the space between one exercise and the next. So basically, just to kind of catch you up, we've just done a little kind of grounding exercise, and then we jumped into, I just read a little bit about the difference between circumstance and experience. Circumstance being the sort of solid, consistent kind of what's happening, and then experience being our feelings or our thoughts about it. So we're actually just going to do a little round of introductions. If you're in a place where you can't unmute and you're just in listen only, that's totally fine too. When I say your name, just simply don't do anything for like 5 seconds and I'll be like, okay, moving on. So yeah, don't worry if you guys don't want to participate today. But yeah, so we're going to just go around, say hello, maybe your name, where you're from, and if there's anything that you want to share, either from the experience of the little kind of meditation, visualization, or from listening to that bit of that I read, or what you're seeing around circumstance and experience. And then we'll jump into a broader conversation after that. So I'm going to start with, I'll just start calling your names around in the order that I see you here. So let's start with Melissa.
Hello, everybody. My name is Melissa. I know some people on the call. Clara, so nice to see you and see your face. I am from Vancouver originally, but I actually moved up to Whitehorse, Yukon Territory in October. So I've been here ever since, although I've been back so many times in the past few months since I've moved that it feels like I haven't moved. But yeah, I've been joining these calls with Katie for a while now, well over a year, and I've been on a bit of a hiatus from them just based on circumstance in itself. Yeah, I think I felt a calling to come to this call today for multiple reasons, and been like experiencing my own circumstance and how I was hoping. I always get something from these calls, and was really, so yeah, I'm coming into to today with a really specific something sitting with me in terms of circumstance. So I'm thinking, I don't want to take up time jumping into it. I'd love other people to introduce themselves. So I'll leave it there for now until we get into the conversation. But yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Melissa. And yes, please hold on to that because we'll be back for you. Let's go next to Sig.
Hi.
Hey, Sig.
I'm just eating, so I'm just trying not to be disgusting on the screen.
Never.
No, I'm just kidding. But anywho, yeah, I'm Sig. I'm from Norway. I've been on one of these calls before, and I know Katie pretty well. So yeah, today I was also sort of called to come a little bit. Not so much because I have something specific, but because it just felt right now. I don't know why. But I am yeah, I'm pretty psyched about exploring this topic because it's a powerful one. All right.
Nice, Sig. Thank you. Okay, how about Thomas? Are you able to unmute and join us? So check in. There he is.
Yeah, sure. Hi everybody. I am Thomas. I am in Victoria right now, probably with Katie. And I do know a couple of you. We've encountered at least once before. So I am not sure why I'm here. I just decided, you know what, maybe I'll just show up and be myself and just see what happens. And I'm probably going to be listening more than anything during this call because I just feel like listening. So yeah, that's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. And I want to just connect Thomas and Sig here on this particular topic because Sig, Thomas has just joined the Genius Catalyst program, and Sig and I went through it together. So I just wanted to just like let you know that there's another Genius Catalyst in the room. And in case you guys are like, why are you calling yourself geniuses? It's basically a Michael and Neil training program that we've all done as coaches. So really exciting and fun. So anyways, good to have you here, Thomas, and I'm really excited for your journey. All right, Monica, would you like to go next, please?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Monica. I'm also in Victoria, and here today over my lunch hour just to step away from my workday and get into a bit of a different space, which is great. The thoughts that I had around what you read was this concept that I learned about in my studies in psychology about internal versus external locus of control, and individuals who are more have a more internal locus of control are less, and this is generally speaking in sort of psych theory, are less inclined to be impacted by their external experiences. And so if the experiences around you are negative, or if there's something that's really unpleasant, having a more internal locus of control allows you to recognize that that experience does not need to impact you. It's not a direct reflection of maybe your behavior or your reaction. So it allows you to have a little bit more control of your reaction and your emotions. So that what you sort of read, I associated loosely to those concepts.
Yeah, thanks, Monica. What I kind of hear in that is like and I don't know too much about this, so I'm not gonna like say, oh, it works this way. But what I hear in that is it sounds like the internal locus of control is like, at least you go in and check with yourself, like, okay, this is happening. Maybe the form response for most people would be like, this is stressful, or this instills fear. But it's sort of like that ability to pause and be like, well, that reaction's still a choice, right? And kind of figure out, well, what reaction do I want to have? What's coming through me, as opposed to, am I just going to grab the first reaction that seems like it's the most publicly used version of that? So that's neat. I like that. Thank you for sharing. Lara, are you able to unmute and say hi? Are you busy? I think she's busy. Oh, there she is. Oh, there we go.
Sorry,
Hi.
I'm working off my phone and I'm not quite attuned to Zoom and my phone. Could you repeat the question as to what you want me to address?
Yeah, absolutely. Just say hi and introduce yourself. And if there's something that's occurring to you around like the difference between experience and circumstance, you can share it. Otherwise, like, just anything, maybe like what prompted you to want to come today, or just anything you're feeling. But it could be as simple as just introducing yourself and saying hi.
Perfect. Okay, so hi, my name's Clara. I live in Vancouver. I'm available during the day, mixed match between physiotherapy and chiropractor and massage appointments and stuff. I was hit by a car in September while riding my bike. So, I mean, when we talk about experience versus circumstance, it's been an interesting roller coaster in terms of acknowledging what's happened, letting go of the fact that I have no control. Except for trying to find the best possible attitude moving forward. And there are definitely days where I am struggling and mentally just not capable of grounding myself. And then there are days where it's just like, I just have to be thankful that I'm alive, because I nearly died. And I'm just so grateful that I am alive, and finding the purpose and meaning in that moving forward. It's kind of been an interesting process. And the purpose as a physical therapist myself, in what I can offer other people as I evolve through the situation, and what I can offer people when I'm on the other side of it.
Thank you, Clara. Yeah, what a incredible example right off of like the bat, and just like my heart goes out to you. I'm sorry, I didn't know that you were in a car collision. And I'm glad that you're getting the treatment you need, and that, you're being taken care of. And yeah, what a powerful example. And I'm sure you've experienced that, like you've said, on a day-to-day basis, your reaction to and your experience of what's happening can change drastically. and you're already receiving, it sounds like, a lot of the gifts from the experience, but you know that there will be even more learning and more information that you get along the road to your journey as well. So it's just, it was beautiful hearing you speak about it like that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sig.
No, I just remembered when you read the thing from Michael, what came up in me. It was I saw clearer than I have seen before how I've been not allowing myself to feel okay right now because I think it's valuable to feel not okay, because that will push me to do something with my life, let's say. And now that I started talking about it, I have a client who's very much like that. Yeah, he has a very hard time just allowing himself to feel okay, because he equates that in his mind with being okay with just nothing, and then always just sit and do nothing. And but in this case, I saw that no, that's not how it is at all. It's just that I'm allowing myself to feel okay no matter what, basically. And from there, it's much more easy to operate and to actually do what I actually do want to do. So yeah, that came up in me.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I like that. Because I get the same way. I know what you mean. I have the same thing where I'm like, if I'm too okay if I feel too okay, I'll just be lazy and I won't do anything. And it's one of these thoughts that I have, like, oh, too much complaint. It's like, I better keep myself under like a nice little drip of stress and tension so that I get things done. It's like, wait, who invented this plan? Because it's a terrible plan. And it's funny that you mentioned this, because the last week I've actually kind of just been like, you know what? I'm not doing anything, like anything. Like, I cleared my calendar. I took everything out of my calendar, took everything except for the things I absolutely had to do. And I'm like, I'm not doing anything that doesn't feel like heaven. And I'm just going to let myself be like this free range animal and just reconnect to what feels good. But the only way I could do it was that I knew that at some point I would get bored of doing that, and then I would want to go do stuff again. But when I think that I'm going to be like that for the rest of my life, doing nothing is the most painful thing on earth, But when I know that I'll snap back into like my regular Capricorn, like I want to do stuff, I'm a hammer and everything's a nail kind of like mentality, I can actually enjoy it, So I appreciate that. And that's kind of cool, because it makes the circumstance of like, I'm not going to do anything for a week. My experience of it is that sounds like heaven. I get to enjoy this. Whereas when I've got a lot of thinking about how now I'm just a lazy person that's never going to do anything again. Whoa, that experience is completely different. And it can just, and that's kind of the cool thing in this conversation, is that as we change the way we frame our experience, the circumstance becomes this, in a way, it becomes this garden where we can grow anything in it. It's like it becomes this fertile soil for anything, because we realize that we can plant any seed of experience into the circumstance. And though it doesn't mean, like, for instance, that one of the things that we said was pain, like the circumstance could be pain, the experience would be suffering, right? Like the experience part of it. And though we may not completely choose that in every moment, we do have that choice from time to time. And we know that because our experience of pain isn't always suffering. Sometimes some days it looks like suffering, and some days it looks more like acceptance or surrender. So that's cool. Thank you, Sig. Heather, are you available to unmute and say hello? There she is. Hello. Lovely.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Oh, I am happy to pop on, and then I'm gonna pop off and go teach my workshop.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I loved I love that you posted that thing of that Michael Neal wrote, because I also got that email, but didn't really read it until you posted it. And it's perfect. It's really perfect for what I've been experiencing in my life too, because I think it's so easy to think that the external circumstance is causing the discomfort. Like, because this is happening, I feel like this. And because of this, I can't experience this. And recently I had a friend close to me. She said, like, I just don't know how you stay like so happy with all the like challenges that you're going through. And I was like, I don't either. But all I know is that like I'm happy. And it almost feels like other people, but then also me, I'm like, oh, like maybe I shouldn't be like, oh, right. I have these reasons that I should not be happy. And, I think that really, to me, that really sums it up. Like, because of being in the, conversations like these and just in the practice and study of the three principles, I actually think that's why, like, I don't see it as my reality. Like, I don't see the circumstance and the experience as the reality. And I actually sometimes don't even feel bad about it. Like, then I start to feel like, oh, right. Am I supposed to feel bad about this? So I find that to be really interesting. And for me, this is really big because even when I knew this, I wasn't experiencing it. Like, I wasn't really, I could tell other people, it made total sense to me in my head, but I wasn't experiencing it because I think, well, for myself personally, I was still hesitating too much, feeling the discomfort or feeling uncomfortable feelings because I was believing them to be something negatively true about myself or about life.
Mhm.
And so to me, it was more of like a process of like being more comfortable with the discomfort, while at the same time, like understanding that just because I'm uncomfortable doesn't mean I did life wrong.
Mhm.
And then I got happy because I'm like, okay, I didn't do life wrong. Might as well dance a little bit to this song.
Oh, I love you so much.
Yeah.
I feel like you've just pointed to something really cool, which is like layers inside of experience. So it's like, okay, there's circumstance, like XYZ, and then there's our experience of it. And maybe our experience of it is that we feel a lot of sadness. But then we also have a judgment on that sadness that, like, now, like, oh, well, I must be sad because I did life wrong, or I must be broken because I feel so sad. And it's like, then there's that space within the experience to be like, well, I'm observing myself having an experience, but I can also enjoy this experience. Like, not only can I enjoy the circumstance, but I can enjoy the experience that I'm having from the circumstance as well. Because guess what? We're like, our entire universe is like a blip of dust in the expansiveness of all things. And yet we're down here like freaking out about like one thing we said or like one thing that happened one day, and like making it out to us being the biggest failure or the biggest, loser.
Well, and then it's like, yeah, you got it. Like, and then it's like I noticed I would feel like, oh, but I don't deserve to be happy. Like, I didn't do, like, with that kind of previous way of responding to feelings and things, it was almost like, well, of course I can't be happy because, like, obviously I'm feeling this way because of doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And that's actually where I'm at with it now, is like I literally am so happy. And then I kind of go, oh wait, like not consciously, but then I sort of notice myself being like, dude, you shouldn't be so happy, like everything's fucked.
Yeah.
And then I'm just like, wow, but I'm still happy. So like, it's really interesting.
it's almost like we're like, we could sprinkle a little bit of those like delicious sprinklings into our life because we know that we deserve to be happy. So let's have a little happy, like from time to time, even though the circumstances are really messed up. But like extreme happiness, that's reserved for people that have great circumstances, right? Like we couldn't possibly have too much of that.
Yeah, like you don't get that if you didn't do everything right. Because if you look back, there's a bunch of stuff you should have did differently, could have done differently, could have done better, and even now you should be probably could have been doing better. So if you
Sound like that kid. That kid is like, I'm good to have to do the dream, like the meme. He's sounding like him.
It's like, and then you get to be happy.
Yeah.
Do all that hard work, and once you do all that stuff, and you've earned it.
Yeah. Yeah, and ultimately, that's just our psyche giving our psyche a bone for being good psyche. Like it's just like it's a game, right? It's a game we make up, and we make up the rules to that game, and then when we play it well, we say you can have ultimate happiness. But the problem is sometimes we play the game right and we follow all the rules and we get there and we still don't feel happy because the happiness isn't attached to the circumstance. It's attached to the rules we made up in our head about circumstances.
Yeah. And then that's even like, that's hard. That's hard to face. I think that happens with age. Everyone that I know that's done something successful was kind of like meh.
Yeah.
Once they got there. Just like me, like I should be really getting ready for my workshop. So I'm gonna go.
Okay. Well, we'll let you leave us on that note, but thanks for coming in, Heather, and thanks for sharing.
Thanks for hosting. I love this space, and thanks everyone for holding this space too.
Yeah, okay. Well, you have a great workshop.
Thanks.
And we'll see you later. But you know what? I would love to just kind of piggyback off of that and open it up to anyone who wants to share. Because I know, Melissa, you had some stuff you wanted to dig into too. So I'd love to hear from you. And just if you have any thoughts on what Heather and I were just talking about, like feel free. We're a small enough group, and we've got a couple people in listen only mode. So we're a small enough group, I think, to just unmute and talk. And if two of you talk at once, I'm sure we'll figure it out. We'll make you virtually arm wrestle, and then we'll but yeah, just what are you hearing in this? What's it sparking for you? Maybe around some circumstances in your own life that you're getting some new insight into. So why don't we start with Sig, because you put your hand up so eloquently. He's good at this. He knows how to Zoom. It's not this rodeo.
It is just like in class, right? You just what came up around what you guys were talking about now is that it can, like, one thing is to like look for happiness in circumstance, and another is to look for happiness in your experience. And then what I'm seeing more and more is that even when it comes to my experience, and that's made of thought, right? Then when I start looking for happiness in my thoughts, then I'm also in the wrong place, let's say. Not necessarily just positive thinking, right? But I feel more and more the deeper aspect, let's say, like the being aspect of being here. I feel it's nourishing. I don't always recognize it or interpret it as now I'm happy, but at the very least I'm okay, right? So yeah, I just want to sort of bring that up a little bit, because it's like I have tried to find happiness in my thoughts too, and that didn't work.
Yeah. Well, and what you're saying is reminding me a little bit of what Michael talks about, like the distinction between happiness and aliveness. And I don't want to put words into your mouth, because that wouldn't be fair. But what it reminds me of is that, happiness is sometimes this feeling that we think like, oh, I need to feel happy, or I need to feel like I'm not feeling happy enough. And then there's this sense of like, oh, I'm not doing it right because I can't connect to happiness. And for me, aliveness is like that I don't know, it's almost like happiness if it didn't have a label, like it's like that feeling of okayness, or that feeling of like, and again, I'm just kind of I'm trying to speak to the feeling that I can feel in my body without knowing that words will never quite like get it. But another way that I've heard Michael explain it is, imagine if you were a wire that had electricity running through it. Like, what would that feel like? Like, what would it feel like to be that wire, to have that energy running through it? And sometimes it's just, for me, noticing like I'm alive, like I'm a living, breathing thing having an experience. And there's a certain sort, almost kind of just like low level buzz that to me feels like a sort of happiness, but without like the fake smile. Not that happiness is a fake smile, but like the one we try to find sometimes when we're like, maybe I could just feel happy by smiling. And so it's, yeah, it kind of, and the cool thing to me about aliveness is I feel like I can feel aliveness in almost any emotion. But I don't always feel joy in, like, for instance, sometimes something really beautiful is happening and I don't feel joyful about it. Like sometimes there's a lack of aliveness in positive, like positive seeming emotions, but then there can be a beautiful aliveness in grief, or in, moments of feeling like a victim, or moments of feeling, there can be an aliveness to that, almost like something that, like, you're feeling the feeling and it's guiding you somewhere, even though it's so painful, like that there's this sense of, I don't feel like I'm articulating myself, but it's almost like there's this sense of purpose beneath it, like it's important somehow, and that it's not going to hold you forever, but that going through it is essential, and that there's some greater purpose there. And it's been in those moments that I've felt the aliveness of feeling of say emotions that maybe would get labeled with a really negative label by people, like often stress or grief or, suffering. It's like no one's really like calling those in, being like, yeah, bring them to me, I'll take them. But there's an aliveness sometimes that animates those things that just feels so real and important. And making that shift from kind of like, I want to be happy to like, I want to feel alive. For me, it's like, it's scary because I'm like, am I inviting the negative stuff too? Like maybe I should just invite the positive stuff and deal with the negative stuff when it comes. But there's just sort of this gentle knowing that life's not going to give you more than you can handle. And when I'm in that place of trusting, I'm open to aliveness coming through any portal. Yeah.
It's very easy to start sort of conceptualizing about these things. But something I found very easy is like, just if I ask you right now, are you alive?
Yes.
How do you know?
I can feel it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sig. Who would like to share?
Sure, I'll go. I feel like following that is and I suppose it may or may not be piggybacking off of that particular, but there's words that have kind of stuck out, I think, throughout. And it's funny you said the word victim. You know, I feel like the word itself is kind of it's a really loaded word and has both negative and positive. No, maybe not positive, but has a lot of connotations in and around the word. But it kind of stuck out to me because I feel like I've been sitting with that a little bit, and I've been very much in circumstance, and my feelings around circumstance have been very very emotional, very negative. So I guess, like, you know, moving to a new place, and to sum up the experiences, I would say, you know, I moved here, I work from home, you know, meeting new people, but also I'm going to school online. So, you know, being able to, you know, I'm not really getting, like, I'm getting out, but my social life is definitely not what it was. And meeting people has been the biggest challenge I've ever had. And I've kind of, and I know I see Clara shaking her head, because I definitely talked to Clara about this before in the past. I know you have a relatable experience. But I think for me, it's a really weird thing, because I've never had trouble making friends before. And I've been telling myself up until this point that it's because I'm 31 and I'm picky. You know, like, you know, I'm not just going to connect with people because, you know, but it really has been because I'm not. And you know, one of the interesting feelings I've been getting out of these circumstances, I've been going into social situations. One of the interesting feelings I'm getting is a sense of social anxiety. Never have I ever, I wouldn't say ever, but I've never felt a level of I've never considered myself somebody with social anxiety. And I feel very anxious going into social situations, and you know, not connecting with people, and not you know, being invited into spaces, and not even necessarily spaces I want to be invited into or care to be invited into, but it just feels exclusionary, and it's nobody's fault but my own. And so I've definitely taken on this victim mentality, in a sense where, you know, it's what am I doing? What's wrong with me? Why don't people want to be my friend? What, you know, so it's very like it's a very strange feeling for me, because I almost feel like, for the first time in my life, I feel it so disconnected from the people around me, both back home and here, and you know, but I know that they're still there. Like, I have my friends that are always there, but yeah, so that's the circumstance, and the feelings around it are ever evolving. I go from, I don't need to, it doesn't matter, I'll make my friends on my own time, to what's wrong with me? And then all this self-pity and feelings of negativity come from that. So, you know, it definitely related to something that, you know, Heather had said around, you know, it being wrong with, like, connecting into your self-worth and the experience you're having at being attached to how you feel about yourself. And then I definitely related, Katie, to what you said around just this ideology around the circumstance and the feelings around it, and in that moment feeling like a bit of a victim in it. So there was a lot there. I don't know. I kind of spewed it, so I'm not really sure what exactly I was trying. It was more of I definitely connect in with separation. And I guess to kind of close that off a little bit is, I have no idea how to deal with it. No idea how to accept it. No idea how to be better at it, how to be better at making friends, or, you know, trying or attempting. Like, I'm very lost in, for the first time in my life, feeling like I have no idea how to surrender to this. Like, it's a very, very foreign thing for me. And maybe it's not, maybe it's very common, or it's like very like close to me, but I just haven't connected in with it. I don't know.
Thank you, Melissa. And Clara, do you want to respond to Melissa?
I do. There are a lot of parallels in my life for different reasons, that I think, you know, having gone through a traumatic accident and being completely isolated in this process, needing help and not really having anyone to, I mean, there was a period of time where I couldn't really cook food for myself and to eat soft foods and stuff, and there was nobody there. And yeah, I've kind of gone through this process of a phrase came up in the context we talk about being versus doing, and being so stuck in our head, and talking about that concept where I like totally feel you, and that feeling of like does anybody love me? Does anybody care? I'm not good enough. I have no friends. That whole like self-pity spiral. And then getting back into that space of just breathing, being, and witnessing the thoughts that are going through my mind. And the concept of passenger consciousness is something that came up in one of the courses that I've been recently doing, and that idea of our mind is really good at making up scenarios about everything, but our mind was never meant to lead us. It was our heart and our soul, and that presence of just being. And we can step back and observe what our mind is doing, acknowledge it, and then breathe into our heart and breathing into our center, and finding the beauty within, where we can kind of step forward and having that courage to step forward. And I don't think there's any place of it ever being, what am I trying to say? I think in where I'm at right now with what's going on for me, the things that have worked the most is when I've let go, surrendered, acknowledged what I'm thinking, and just trying to be present in my body. And in those spaces, more synchronicities kind of come up, where like somebody asked me if I wanted to go for a walk on Saturday, and it just kind of happened. And I'm hoping to create a space of more elements of synchronicity by just being present in my body, and not necessarily judging the thoughts, but just acknowledging them and practicing breath. And being in a whole new city is definitely a new and foreign place, and it's scary. It can be incredibly scary, and I am so proud of you for making such a brave move to follow your heart and to acknowledge that space of beautiful love that's there within the two of you and the world that you're going to create there. And you are creating.
Wow.
And I don't know how much of what I said kind of rang true to you there, because I feel like I'm rambling, and that's partly my concussion a little bit too.
No, I appreciate that a lot, Clara. And to be clear, my partnership is definitely an area of comfort for me, and I feel that. And it's but it's almost like weird. It's a weird paradox in my life, because I'm usually like having issues in the relationship, or like I've never connected in with relationship while I've been in relationship, but I've had good friendships. And now it's like I'm strong in my relationship, and we have our stuff, but I'm strong in relationship, but now my friendships are like, I feel disconnected from that part of my life. So I definitely connect into what you're saying. And I think I believed everything you're saying, but then my thoughts were like, yeah, easier said than done. And I'm not judging what you're saying, but it's like this logic versus like, what, like my brain and my heart are doing two different things. And I think where I also think of like what you made me think of, Clara, is what Katie, you were saying, the layers that exist within the experience. You have a circumstance, but then the layers of experience are so different. Like, for example, we're having a barbecue here tomorrow, with a bunch of Gleb's friends and people I've met through him. And now any social situation I go into, I'm so anxious, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to show up? Is it going to be awkward? Am I going to be awkward? Are they going to be awkward? Or do they even want to see me there? Like, there's so many layers to one circumstance, one interaction I'm going into. And I so badly want to be able to just go into it and surrender to it and just experience it. But I feel like they become overpowering. And sometimes, I go in and I just calm, and then I leave it. And then I'm like, then I overthink it. I'm like, wait, did I say that? Did that happen? Did this happen? And so I appreciate absolutely that there's this level of just like not judging my thoughts. And I've been very good at it in the past, and I'm struggling to surrender and be good at not judging my thoughts in this particular circumstance in my life. And it's a challenging one to kind of understand and navigate.
Sig, do you want to do something?
Yeah. Just came up something for me. when you, Melissa, shared about how you have these thoughts before you go into these social situations. Because I was socially anxious a lot, and I always try to like crack the code, let's say. I was like, how do people like just show up and make connections, you know? So I was like constantly trying to figure out how should I do it, and usually that came with a lot of anxiety and shit like that. So what's really been powerful for me has been to, like, as best I can, just show up and see what happens. Because those thoughts I have in the beginning can mess me up so bad, you know, like really, really mess up my flow. And when I sort of just show up, and like, I don't even have to trust that I will do good, but at the very least, I know that if I'm not showing up with a head full of thoughts, then I'm more clear and more connected with reality, let's say. So it's easier to connect with others.
Do you also find that, maybe this is a question for the group, I know we've talked about this in past sessions in some format, Katie, is around like expectation. And I know thought, expectation, there's a link there, but the idea of going into like Sig, like you're saying, going into a circumstance or going into a scenario and going at without thought, but I also think of maybe thought and expectation are the same thing. I don't know, am I overthinking it?
Like an expectation is of course a thought. Like any concept you can think of is a thought.
Yeah, like 100%. And I think going into something, you know, like getting rid of those thoughts, but going into something without an expectation of how it should or could or would go. I think that's maybe those are the thoughts that I'm having that are more, you know, I go again, coming out of those circumstances, you're overthinking it. What did I say? Did I say something weird? Did I do something weird? Or it's such a simple human thing, you know, going into interactions and wanting to be liked, or going into a social interaction and, you know, being connected in and connecting with other people. It's such a simple, basic human thing. And I think when you have multiple situations where it kind of doesn't go the way you're hoping, or maybe you don't get that connection or you don't get that, it starts to weigh down a little bit on your future expectations of going into those situations. So what you're saying, Sig, really relates in like going into it with no thoughts and just showing up is it sounds so simple. Yeah, I'm sitting with it, and I really I hate the fact, and I'm being so transparent. I hate the fact that I'm being skeptical. You know, I hate the fact that I'm like, yeah, it's so simple, but like.
No, but that's the thing. Like, we have to experience these things to see it as true, let's say, right? So I guess a healthy amount of skepticism is just a good thing.
I guess so.
Explore for yourself, right? But I can add, like, even now I can, before I go into social situation, I can have a lot of thinking around it, or I can experience a lot of it coming up. But as long as I sort of remember right before I'm there, or even after I got there, like, oh yeah, right, I don't actually have to take those seriously, or the less like I can have shitloads of bad thinking before I go into it, and I can, like, as long as I have a certain remembering of this fact, it helps.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Okay, and same thing with Clara. Thank you. So very helpful. I feel like it's a few times this has turned into like a workshop this with Melissa, and I feel kind of bad about that. But
Melissa, no, because you know what, honestly, like for when someone brings something that's actually going on for them that's real, it's helpful to everybody, but because it becomes something that everyone can see themselves in to a degree, and it sparks a conversation. So it's awesome. Like sometimes I'm on these calls and no one wants to share, and I'm just like, so you want me to just keep talking? Like it's just wonderful, I think, for everyone, for someone to bring something that's real and relevant to them, because it illustrates like what you're sharing with us doesn't make you less than or a person with a problem. It makes you human, and you're willing to actually talk about something that's human that's going on with you. And we can all relate. Like, I mean, I moved to Victoria in the middle of COVID, and I knew nobody. That I wasn't even allowed out of my house for the first like month and a half, and do like, you know what I mean? Like it was like, and I'm like, how am I going to make friends? I'm so alone. Like I completely went through something similar. And, I feel like we've all been there at some point in our life, or we have some other parallel thing going on where we're like, oh my God, I felt that, or I still feel that in this way. And, for me, like these conversations, it's like, we're not here to solve the human experience. We're here to just be like, wow, that's the human experience. And just by all kind of like looking at it and seeing it and be like, isn't that a trip? Like it just becomes less of this thing that you're individually struggling with, and more of this thing that everyone experiences at some time. But Sig and I, at least from experience, can tell you that we had it and we got through it, and you're gonna get through it too. Like there's gonna come a day, like, I was so worked up about not knowing anyone here, and then I met a few friends and they're really nice people. And the fact that I know that I have them and that they're my friends and I could call them anytime, I hardly ever do. Like, I'm not a bad friend, but like, I'm also kind of a loner and I don't spend that much time with other people. But the thought that, hey, I have friends around, and if I wanted to spend time with them, I could, like, is a completely different thought than, oh shit, I don't know anyone and I don't have any friends. And then like, it's just so crazy how we use this creative Play-Doh of thought, like, and then we use thought to think about thought, and then we use thought to create ideas that we use to think about our thinking. And it's so multi-leveled, but it's just like the cool way that we work, like it's the analogy that came to mind was like, it would be like a dog with fur being like, I need to get rid of all my fur before I go into this social situation. I can't go in with any fur. It's like, you're made of fur. Like, what I mean? like, but then when we get so psyched out about getting rid of something that's so like intertwined into like the human experience, that's when we like kind of freak ourselves out, right? We get so sucked into thinking that part of the design shouldn't be part of the design. And then that's when we're pretty much what happens is we go from like 1 to 10 thoughts a minute to like 200 to 500 thoughts a minute. And when we're in 200 to 500 thoughts per minute, that's just always going to feel messed up because it's too much thoughts, And it's like, my favorite analogy is kind of like, right now you're driving a bus and you're holding onto the wheel and the bus is full of all this thinking. Like, what would happen if you just let go of the wheel? Like, what would it feel like to be like, you know what, I think it's safe to not stop having these thoughts, but just to stop staring every single one in the eye and like getting in a fist fight with it every time it shows up.
I always love your analogies. They're always so vivid. And they evolve as you explain them, which is even funnier.
They just get weirder and more
visual. It's great. It's great. No, and it's something else you said kind of stuck out is when you said you're what this related, but you said you're kind of a loner. I've never considered myself an introvert, and I think I'm fighting it right now. Like I enjoy being at home. I'm enjoying my time here. I feel like there's a part of me that's socially anxious going into social situations, but there's also a part of me that's like, why? I just want to stay home and I don't want to go out and be social. Like, why would I want to do that? So I think I'm also fighting this like bit of identity of like, who do I want to be in certain places and how do I want to show up? And it's such an important point, is being true to that going into situations. Once you make a conscious decision every time you go into something, right? I'm going to go be social here. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do that. And then that conscious decision is kind of, I think, the point potentially of surrender, where you're like, in this moment, if I'm making this decision, I'm going to just surrender to it and go into it and clear my thoughts and just show up. And I think when I do make those, it's important to just show up is what that situation's calling for. And I don't know what that really means because it's going to be so different per situation. But I like the idea of like steering the thoughts, like your analogy, like almost letting go of the wheel. Like my mind went immediately to, well, you're gonna crash. So
In the most wonderful way.
yeah, no, thank you for clarifying that, because my mind went to like, ooh, I don't know if I want to let go because that sounds bad, but like what could happen, right? What are the options? So having thoughts, and you're saying letting go of the wheel is sort of just letting it go, letting the thoughts be. And to Sig's point as well, is just showing up without attaching a meaning to anything.
Yeah, something else came up that I just for the sake of exploring it. But I just noticed that you said earlier that you never really did struggle socially, right? It's always sort of just a given or something like that was what I heard. And what that reminded me of is that I have had experiences like that where like there is something that is sort of natural to me, and then I trip up at some point, and then I start making a big deal out of that fact that I tripped up. And then suddenly I start having issues with this thing because I keep having all these anxious thoughts around it because I tripped up once, you know? And it's like I'm creating a problem out of the fact that I took one thing very seriously at one moment in time, you know?
And also makes me think of something, a word that came up recently was confirmation bias. Something I was thinking, like, I can't remember the context. It was something that came up, and it was the idea that when something happens or you have an idea about who you are or a situation, you're just constantly looking, maybe consciously or unconsciously looking for that in situations. So it's like, if what you're saying kind of relates in that, if you have a circumstance that didn't go well, or something went wrong, or you tripped up in a social situation per se, like as an example, now you're like going into the next social situation and you're almost looking for where you're going to trip up. Yeah. So it's almost inevitable that that's going to be in your experience, because you're looking for an opportunity, and then something might happen that is seemingly small, but that's what you were looking for. That's because you're already like looking to confirm your own biases going into a situation. And that's a psychology piece. We do that in human nature. Like if somebody is a really strong feminist, for example, and patriarchy is like, and don't get me wrong, I'm all for it, but you go into a situation and you're like, patriarchy is the reason for the world's problems, you're going to go into situations being like, that's where patriarchy has attached itself, that's where patriarchy has attached itself. And so you're constantly looking for it, and it could be very true, but by attaching a meaning to it and looking for those, like something like an anxious situation or somewhere where you can trip up in a conversation, you're almost asking for that anxiety to come in and trip up the situation. That's such an interesting point. I like that. I mean, I don't think that, but
Can I just bring up something? Sorry.
Yeah, Thomas.
yes,
Thomas.
It's just something that came up to me as Sig was pointing it out, and you also pointed out as well. Much like you, Melissa, in some ways I relate to that, because I actually lived up in the north for almost 3 years. I actually lived up in Yellowknife.
Oh, I did not know that. Sorry, go on.
No, that's okay.
That's even more remote.
That's even, well, it's a small town. But I moved up there for work, and it was, from what I was told, for many people, it was a bucket list item, because they wanted to experience everything in the north and the aurora, the northern lights. But for me, it was very different, because it was for work, and it was my first time leaving BC in all of my life. So, and considering the fact that I feel like I'm more of an introvert. So for me, I had to really step outside my comfort zone and to really meet new people. especially, you know, when you travel alone. But for you, could have been different. It could have been with a partner, but I just went up there alone. And I had to sort of challenge myself to actually meet new people, say hi. And these are things that I never really had to do because I knew people at home. But going back to Sid's point, for me was ever since I started learning about what Katie and Signal already, is that I was doing what I learned now before, just simply not have those expectations or whatever thoughts that come to my mind, or little t for that matter, and just showing up, and just be yourself as much as you can be, and then seeing what actually happens. And I just discovered, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I was doing without realizing it, because I learned that if I have all of these thoughts or this thinking, then it overwhelms me and I start to panic. My heart starts throbbing and everything. And after a while, I realized, you know what? Knowing what I know now, it's if I catch myself thinking about that stuff, then I know that's going to cause a huge problem for me. And what I learned along the way, like even up until now, is that having those thoughts, it was more of like, oh, okay, I have a lot of these coming into my mind. But the trouble for me came was when I was giving any one of these thoughts a whole lot of attention. And if I gave it a lot of attention, then it's gonna become so overpowering to the point where I'm like, okay, what the hell am I thinking? Why? Like, this is so silly. So like even now when I'm thinking about this little t, I'm sort of telling myself, okay, you know, maybe I should just calm myself down, close my eyes, and okay, I'm giving it too much attention. Let's just stay calm for a little bit and see what happens. And then I just realized, wow, okay, you know what? Yeah, I did give myself a lot of grief, a lot of anxiety because I was overthinking it. And so I sort of took a step back, and as Sig was mentioning, just showing up without overthinking it. Just be who you are on the inside and see what happens, and you might be surprised as to what will happen at the end. But that's just how I felt, you know, when I heard those words and what Sig was mentioning, and even what Katie was sort of bringing up to the idea of, or maybe not. But yeah, it was just something that I wanted to share because I do resonate with you on that, and just sharing what I sort of learned along the way and what I realized. Oh, okay, this is what I have been doing this whole time, and I just didn't realize it. But after realizing it, okay, now let's see how much more of this I can explore down the road. So those are just my capital T thoughts that come to mind.
Thank you, Thomas. You know, it's cool, like when I hear you say that, because there's something I was going to say to Melissa, and then that just kind of like locked it in, but was that the difference between natural and normal, you know, and for a long time, it might be very natural and normal for us to be highly social, to have lots of friends, like to have that flow effortlessly. And then sometimes we get in a new situation and those thoughts are just so loud. Yeah, go ahead, Melissa. I know you got to deal with something.
Sorry, the dog just out of our yard just escaped, and I'm just seeing it like running out in the road. As I'm gonna go find it. I'll be right back.
Okay, sounds good. But yeah, Thomas, like to what you're speaking of, is it's like, you know, you can find a coaching modality like the 3 principles that tells you like, hey, we're just built this way, but it's just shining a light on how well we're built, you know, and how even though it might become normal to be socially anxious for a time, or it might be normal for that pendulum to swing away from natural and then go into a place that becomes normal for a time, it's our nature to come back to natural. And so what you found through being willing to go through that experience is an invitation back to natural. And it's so cool when you have these experiences and then you start to actually like kind of get involved in this understanding, and it brings you back to like, oh yeah, not because the understanding says it's so, but because that's how we're built, like that's how we're naturally meant to, well, that's how we're naturally programmed to be able to show up.
I have to go. I'm sorry.
Okay. Bye,
This has
Sig.
been lovely. Bye, people.
No worries. We're getting to the end of our 90 minutes anyway. So thank you, Sig. And I'm sure Melissa will be back here in a minute. We'll see you soon. But yeah, it's I kind of lost my track of thought there, but it's been a good conversation. I've been enjoying this because, I think even if we can see 1% more of what we thought was circumstance actually being experience, it has the potential to like just open up a crack for light to get in. And I was listening to a great masterclass with another 3P practitioner named Deepen Bettinger, who, Thomas, you'll probably get to know here over the next couple of months. And Deepen was talking about how everything that is quantifiable in the universe, everything that scientists can quantify, makes up less than 4%. And that's just from what they're able to quantify based on what they can reach. Makes up less than 4% of the energy that exists in our universe. And so 96%, if not more, of our experience is energy, and thought is this spiritual energy that allows us to create worlds. It allows us to create how we see and how we experience life. And so, even when we just can pull back the curtain an inch on that 96% and just see it a little bit more clearly and just have a tiny bit more perspective, I feel like it has the power to just help us settle back into, I don't know, just how well we're made, how well we're made to be able to deal with all of this. Like even for you, Melissa, like you are impeccably made. You are a social creature that has had nothing but this incredible innate ability to be social your whole life, and so many friends in so many different domains. And then we let like one or two thoughts that we have in moments that seem really scary. They're like, what if I don't know how to do social situations anymore? Or what if the people up here aren't my people? And we let these thoughts just kind of like tumble around like a tumbleweed in our head until they pick up so much steam that they become our normal. And we forget that our natural is just being with people. Like we forget that our natural is that we are connected to everything and everybody, and that we can connect with anyone at any time. Maybe we don't always choose to do that, and that's not always our reality, but it's the potential that lies underneath everything. If not for our thoughts, we wouldn't experience separation. And so, and I don't know if you caught this, Melissa, but what I was saying is that even if we just see like 1% more of that, it can completely turn our world on its head, in a beautiful way. It can just crack open so much possibility. And I think part of the analogy of taking the hands off the wheel isn't so much that now the bus is going to crash, but it's like you weren't driving the bus anyways. Universal mind was driving the bus. Like the flow of life was driving the bus. Like life's already bringing you to your new best friend. You just got a little bit heady about when's that going to happen, and what if I have to have a bunch of crappy conversations on the way, and what like, is this person it? Because I was hoping for something else. Like it's just having that like surrendering a little bit and having that trust that like your desire to have an amazing community of friends in the Yukon is already on its way to you, and everyone else you meet in the meantime just gets to be someone fun that you get to play with until that materializes, And so it's about letting go of the wheel because you were just fighting the force of life anyway.
You know what I'm learning?
Or
What?
go, Thomas, you go.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just saying, bringing that idea up, Katie, is just over the past few weeks or even a month, I've just been sort of embracing every chance that I get, the whole idea of I don't know.
Mm.
So I'm like every single time every single time I encounter some kind of a circumstance, or a circumstance is coming to me in a way, I just sort of tell myself, you know what? I have no fucking idea, but let's go with it and see what happens. And sometimes it feels scary, but also at the same time, when I tell myself, oh, okay, or whenever that thought comes into my mind, oh shit, I have no idea what's going on, I tell myself, you know what? That is just another thought. I don't know. And then another thought comes in, you know what? I'm overthinking that even just with that thought that just came in. Okay, you know what? I have no idea. Let's see what happens. And sometimes I laugh about it deep down inside. And sometimes I'm like, what the hell did I just say to myself? But at the end, it's like, yeah, you know what? I have no idea. We'll see what happens. And that's, yeah, that's that's it. That's all I just wanted to say about that.
Thank you. Melissa?
No, I just all of that is just so relatable. And I think I think I needed to hear, I needed that validation of it to be like, it's on its way, like it's gonna find you. Because in those moments, like in this moment, it kind of feels like am I ever gonna meet my people up here? Like, am I supposed to meet my people up here? Is that what's supposed to happen? What does the universe want for me up here? Like, and I think I remember when I was contemplating this move, or I decided this move, Katie, I was jumping on one of these calls, and something else that had come up was, whatever this experience is meant to be, like it just needs to be. And I was going into it with that thought process of like, yeah, like I'm moving up here with a partner, but I'm also experiencing something very different, moving somewhere for the first time, moving out of my hometown, where like everything I've ever known. So I think it's almost this extra, like I've done it to myself. Like I've put this extra pressure on me to make it something great and amazing and incredible. And I think by forcing it, or thinking that, like always being like, is this that incredibleness? Is this that moment? Is this the lesson I'm supposed to learn? It puts this like unnecessary pressure on the natural way things are supposed to be, which, to Thomas's point, we just don't know. I have no idea. I have no clue. We don't know anything in that moment. So yeah, I think my next thing I need to focus on is just surrendering. Just like letting it be, and not forcing it, and just showing up as myself in circumstances, which can seem a little convoluted at times, but I appreciate that. I appreciate the insights, because they're really, really beautiful.
Yeah, and you know what I find is like surrender is like an onion. Like you surrender a layer and you're like, there, I surrendered. Like I'm done. I feel so good. Oh, everything's great. And then life's like, you need to surrender another layer, and you're like, another layer. I've given oh no, wait, there is a little more here. You know, you're like shit. And then again and again, and it's like at first you're pissed off because you're like, what? I already gave it all up. Like you're. But you know, it's beautiful, Melissa, to see you. And you know, one of the things Michael Neal says is he talks about how excitement is like aliveness with tension. And so sometimes we're going through life. Oh, Clara dropped a thing. There she goes. Sometimes it's like we're going through life looking for the exciting things. We're like, oh, when is life going to excite me? Like, when's life going to give me this big, exciting thing I asked for? And you know, as great as excitement is, it's that aliveness, but with attention. And so sometimes there's something more gentle for you, or something like aliveness can come in any form, right? And whereas excitement, it's like, then we're just looking for the big shiny thing. And excitement will come, like it's always a part of life. But sometimes just kind of dialing it back and being like, the jewel could literally be hiding in anything, you know?
That's amazing. Thank you.
And Clara, I feel like you've been trying to talk, but you haven't gotten your in. So it's your mic to Clara.
I think what comes up for me here is acknowledging the beauty in your soul and sharing all of this, Melissa. And I think one of the things that I want to acknowledge for you is that the beauty and connection, when you share that aliveness within your soul, when you share those moments of vulnerability, and that's not necessary in all situations, but I think when you take that time to share that vulnerability, it creates a depth of connection that it just that humanity that is so incredibly beautiful. That's one of the things that I love about you. And you know, when the situations call for it, when you're willing to be vulnerable and be open. I mean, even if it's appropriate to share that you're struggling with meeting people when you talk to people, and understanding like how to connect with people within the community, opening up that conversation creates another conversation, which is the beauty and the depth of it. And I think what I've known of, I mean, I grew up in some of theirs and not as far north as Whitehorse, but that commentary on a small town, that beauty of connection is so essential to what drives the community. You can't live in isolation that you can in a city, and so being willing to just be you and share you, everything will come. Yeah, that's what comes up for me. I think, and I say that fully acknowledging that I am not doing that myself in a lot of circumstances. When I say I feel isolated and alone in Vancouver right now with this injury, I do, and I'm trying to embody that acceptance of what is, because if I don't, I'm going to spend every day crying. So yeah, I love your bravery and your beauty in sharing, and that humanity is the most beautiful thing, and everybody you touch with that. Love you.
I love you. Call me anytime.
Thank you.
Don't isolate. I'm isolated too. Call me.
Thank you, Clara. And yes, and you said something earlier too about, like opening up that space for those synchronicities, for that connection to come in. And sometimes it's as simple as like recognizing what are maybe some of the habitual thoughts that you have around, like maybe you've got this thought in the back of your head that you haven't even noticed, where you're like, oh, well, people aren't really cool up here, or the people aren't really into the same things as me, or everyone seems to just be into like mud bogging and drinking at the pub. Like, you know what I mean? Which, I mean, I grew up in a small town, so like I get it, right? Mud bogging, like that's like taking your truck out and going through mud puddles.
Okay, well, yeah, I definitely.
Maybe we don't call it
I haven't
that
been
anymore.
up here long enough to know, or maybe Whitehorse is too big of a town for that. I don't know. Like
maybe I'm like making
maybe that's a northern BC thing and not a Yukon thing or a Whitehorse thing.
It's because the snow hasn't melted yet, so
haven't.
you don't even have mud yet. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, we went through a muddy spot when the snow melted, but
no, like I mean, and it's easy to just think like, well, my people aren't up here, like I don't know if I'm gonna connect to people, or it's not, and just like making a little bit of space. I mean, like they're incredible, like just like maybe thinking and like feeling it. I mean, like there are incredible people up here who are gonna be amazing friends to me, and maybe some of them are gonna be really unsuspecting packages, and others maybe it's going to be exactly what I was looking for. But just like creating that space and kind of just feeling the feeling of how cool it feels to know that your people are up there and out there. And it's just a matter of time before you run into each other. And I think just from that kind of like law of attraction standpoint, it's like, it feels good, right? And so like, I don't know what works and what doesn't work, but what I do know is that if it feels good and it gives you a good feeling in your body, that it's a magnet for other good feelings and good relationships. And maybe there's even some space to just do a little bit of journaling around what's my ideal friend? Like, what am I looking for? Do I want to find someone who, can do certain things with me, certain activities that I can have deep conversations with? And like, just writing it out puts it into your mind, and your mind's eye can only really hold one thing at once. And so at least by filling it with a little bit more of what you want, as opposed to a lot of evidence about how what you don't want is all around you, it can just be a fun exercise, like a fun place to play. And just like visualizing that and kind of calling it in, because I think sometimes we do pass through victim in life. Like all feelings are on offer. Like we're gonna, like, passing through anything is a-okay. Getting stuck in something is just, it's still allowed. It's life. You can do whatever you want. But what I've noticed is that if we get stuck in a feeling for a long, long time, that's when we start to kind of bring in that element of suffering, right? And so sometimes just like, it's almost like taking a bucket of water into like a stagnant bowl and like just dumping it in so that it like slooshes some of it out, right? Just kind of like mix something else in there if you want to, with some of that like habitual thinking, and see if it kind of shakes stuff up a little bit.
Well, to your point, it's also like, you're manifesting. You, like, if you start to manifest it, like, law of attraction, you start to just believe it's out there, and that impacts it impacts your experience of the circumstance too. Like, it's just hasn't happened yet, it's going to happen, this person's coming, or even in the longer you sit in those negative thoughts, and I've noticed this, it's starting to become my reality, like, of I'm not worthy enough to be somebody's friend. I'm awkward. I'm socially awkward. I'm an anxious person. People probably feel my energy. And that's the thing, going into these situations, I don't blame people for maybe not connecting with me as much in social situations if I'm the anxious one, if I'm approaching situations in a way where I'm not showing up as my best self. And so, I think part of it is letting go. I like the idea of like kind of manifesting, understanding what this person might look like. So I can also know it's out there, but showing up as who I am in these circumstances, and knowing that if I don't connect with people, those are just not people I'm meant to connect with, as opposed to why don't they want to connect with me? It's just it's a paradigm shift, a thought shift. And yeah, it's a lot of powerfulness. And I think, and Clara and Thomas, I hope you could take something out of that as well, because I know it's kind of centered on my experience, but also there's a lot in there that I think just showing up in life with that mentality is important. That believing that everything you need is within yourself, but it's also everything you want is within your reach, and it's on its way to you.
Have any of you ever had the experience of like when you first met like your best friend, and just like walking into the room and just knowing, like without a shadow of a doubt, that you and this person were just like you just had a bond? Like, have you ever met somebody, and maybe it's not your best friend, like maybe some friendships are slow burns, but there's sometimes when you just walk into a room and like within 10 minutes you're like best buddies with someone, and you don't even really know like why that happened. It's not like you were in a particularly good mood, but it was kind of just like, I don't know, maybe you got your like soul, like the part of your soul tribe or something. I can call it whatever you want, but like there's just people that like, even if there was a million barriers, you were going to find each other and you were going to be friends. Like, I remember the first time I went to Antonia's Zumba class, I cried the whole time in the back. I was so happy to be there. It was like her energy, and like we became best friends. And within a couple months, I was like like her maid of honor at her wedding. And I'm like, how did we become friends? So like, it just happened so quickly. Like it didn't like, I could have tried to be awkward, or I could have tried to like not like her, but I just couldn't. Like, it's just like, we just were meant to be friends. And I think sometimes we go into situations and we're like, oh, if I'd only tried harder, or if I was nicer, or if I was different, maybe me and this person would have clicked more. And it's like, you can kind of just trust that like when you're meant to be really close with somebody, it's just going to happen. you know, like life will keep pulling you together, whether like despite your best efforts to sabotage yourself. So just know that that's coming for you. Yeah.
And less and less of those as you get older, because you heal, you become different, you have different interests, you have different, so like knowing as well that, you know, as you get older, your friends group does naturally shrink and those relationships and connections just become closer. So I love that. I really love that thought process that there's going to be people you just are meant to have in your life, and trusting that those people will find their way, regardless of how hard you try to escape it.
It's true. It's true. And the best thing you can do is just be yourself. You know, like the best thing that you can do to make that happen is to just gently rest in being you. And you know what? Being yourself is your natural. Like it's where you'll always come back to when the dust settles. So like even if you feel like you're way out like in a socially anxious phase, like it will wrap itself up eventually, you know? And you'll come back to your grounding. You can trust that.
I love this space.
I love all of you. So we should wrap it up, but I would love to hear anything that anyone's sitting on, if you have any last things you want to share. And then maybe a word that just sums up how you're feeling.
I just have to say, going to that whole idea of Katie that you were mentioning about friendship, and for you, Melissa, about as you get older, I am experiencing that right now. I had a lot of friends when I was in Vancouver, but now my friendship circle has shrunk. But I also deep down inside know that my circle of friends right now are all of the people who I know I'm meant to be around, you know, like, yeah, it's like my own inner tribe, if you want to call it that. And it's so different from the Man City life where, oh, this is my tribe, but we never really connected in ways that it's like, oh my gosh, you know what? Now I'm feeling something. It's like, whoa, okay. Well, I had like a whole entire big balloon of friends, and now it's like this little small, diffused, little wrinkly balloon, but it's so much more meaningful to have this than to have that. So it's just something that I have discovered.
I think one word that I'm leaving today with is I don't know. I feel validated. I don't know. I just feel like it felt like what I was going through was really lonely and like very like something was wrong. And it just feels validating that it's just such a human. And it's almost like logically I knew it was a human experience, but hearing it and having the insights from this group where it was very validating, and I feel comforted in that.
Amazing, Melissa, because if you can simply go from the circumstance being you haven't found your friend group yet to not being the experience that there's something wrong with you, like if just that gets taken away and you get to have a new experience without there's something wrong with you, that's so much room. Like you just freed up acres and acres of space for
weight off your shoulders. Yes. Oh my gosh, that weight is so great. And like, and I'll just say it's really great to see Thomas, great to see you, and Clara, I've missed your face and your light as well. So thank you for sharing. And Thomas, I will say that you always think you're not going to say something going into this group, because I do that often. I'm like, I'm just in a listening mood today. I'm just going to sit. And every time I will open my mouth because I feel called to open my mouth. And that's just also just me as a human being. But it's often that these spaces just open up something in us. And I'm so glad that you were able to join, and Katie for always keeping and holding a space that's so open and vulnerable and inviting of connection and these thoughts. So yeah, I haven't joined one in a while, and I feel revitalized.
And you know, Melissa, I can't help but point out that you haven't come in months, and then you show up and the room is full of your friends. Like,
Yeah.
And like how, you know what I mean? Like for someone who's having a hard time with friends, you sure got a lot of friends here. Like from,
It's also a good reminder. It's
I
such a good
know.
reminder that, like there's people I consider my friends that I haven't talked to in years or months, and I consider you all such good, like amazing people and connections in my life in different ways. And it's such a great reminder that even though I'm in a new place with new people, that I still, those things haven't gone away. They just might be a little quieted in the background. And when they show up, they're still as authentic and beautiful. And I find that maybe, Thomas, that's what you're alluding to as well. When you have that close group of friends that you maybe don't talk to as often or all the time, but those are the people you can always count on to be there. Like I know if I called Katie tomorrow, it's like, hey, like, yeah, she'll be there. Similarly, like, Clara was like huge getting me up here. Like I was texting her the whole time when I was on my drive up here because she was from Smithers and give me all these tips and just super supportive. And so like I think I need to lean into those because I have friendships like back in Vancouver that have dwindled. Like Arlie's one of my best friends, but she's a mom now. I barely get to ever talk to her. But so that's also like a weird feeling. I had my best friend and me, we've dwindled, we've sort of died off. Like we're not really that anymore. So that's like grieving a friendship that was like in my life for 10 years and then moving to a new place and having this expectation that I need to quickly find something to fill these supposed holes in my life that are there, but they're not. I just have to, I think it's just a matter of knowing they're there, but leaning into them when I need to, or when I feel called to lean into those friendships. And I think that's a thing for anybody in those circumstances, that when we feel super alone, we're not ever really truly alone because there's always those places we can lean into for connection and light. And this is one of those spaces, right? This is one of those spaces you can lean into for connection if you're craving it, if you're needing it, and knowing and reminding that these people exist in your life.
Yeah. And I think too, like part of our relationships are there to remind us that feeling is intergenerated. Like even when we get around people and we feel connected, that feeling of connection is coming from inside of us. And it's almost as though the universe is like, look, I know you've been through some tough times, you've lost some friends, but we're going to need you to find that sense of connection inside yourself before we're going to let you have a friend to come fill it from the outside. And it's kind of like in relationships. It's like, you got to love yourself before you're going to find that partner that can fully love you. Right. And so sometimes it's just that pointing back inwards. It's like, clean it up in here, start loving you again. And then the person that loves themselves is going to come and you get to be this like powerhouse team, power couple friends.
I love all that. I love it. I love it. Oh my God.
Oh,
I'll let somebody else, like Clara or Thomas, what are you being left with? Because I want to feed off of all that.
I love you.
Mm.
And you'll always be able to reach out to me if you need a shoulder and everything. So you haven't lost me. You never have. You never have.
Isn't that amazing? I haven't seen you in 10 years and I'm like, oh, Thomas.
I never left.
I'll have to come visit the island and we'll all have to hang out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Melissa, I've always wanted to connect with you on a deeper level, and I just wish there was more time before you left. I listened to you guys talking about friends and wanting to have. I mean, we talk about friends as you age, and I'm 10 years older than you, Melissa, like by a few days. I'm gonna be 42 next month.
You look 31.
And I'm jealous of how you're talking about your friends. And I shouldn't be. I know I have a lot of, I know a lot of people, but that depth of connection that you're looking for in the Yukon, I'm looking for that here too.
Mm-hmm.
And going through and entering a feeling like that is challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I hear you. I love you.
I love you.
I get it.
You have a connection. I'm not there, but I'm there. I'm there. Always. Always. You're a beautiful soul, Clara, and I understand. Like I know you've shared this before with me and other people in our group, and it's hard coming into, this is what I found, like for me, like it's hard for me, like coming into friends groups, being here, that have been friends for 30 years or whatever. Like they're not 30, they're like 25 all here. Like they're younger than me, but these people have been friends for years and years and years. And it's really hard coming into a dynamic where people have been friends for a long time. And that's something I found, and I can imagine that was hard for you, because a lot of us in Vancouver were friends for years, and we had this connection on Teams, and you're like, I want to be part of this friends group, but how do I connect? I love these people. And I completely relate, and I understand that it's so hard sometimes to find that connection with people who already are connected, right? Yeah, and I'm sorry if you ever felt that isolation, because I feel it now, and I don't know if this is kind of specifically what you're talking about, but I know making friends and connections in places where maybe you're new to is really challenging. So yeah, I hope I get to see you when I'm in town in a few weeks. I'll be there. I'll have to send you the invite. I'm having a little birthday dinner. I don't know where yet, but I'll let you know. And if not, we'll make time, because I want to see you. And don't ever feel similarly like you can't reach out or call.
Thank you. I look forward to meeting up.
Mm. And yeah, Claire, I just really want to honor you, because sometimes there's nothing more lonely than having an entire community of people, but not feeling really connected to anybody deeply. It's like you're in a sea of fish, but you're starving, or like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, it can be really challenging, because it looks like it should be all around you, but there's not that energy between. And I can see that this experience of this collision and everything that's happening is just like taking you apart in such a beautiful way. And I trust that it's going to just build you back up to be like even more beautiful and even more resilient, and just even more of just like a magnet for beautiful things and beautiful friendships and connections. And I have so much faith, and I can see it. And you're an absolutely gorgeous human being, and you deserve all that love and all that connection. And we love you so much. Oh, you guys, such a beautiful time. Well, I think my word is going to be this realness. Like, thanks for bringing the realness, everybody. And I don't know, this call is just such a great reminder that we as humans are constantly going through things, and we've decided that we're going through it alone and no one else is going through it. And like a quick conversation is like, oh damn, no, we're all kind of there at any given moment. Like, we can slide into that or slide into this, and it's all just part of the journey. But simply talking about it with each other actually makes it a whole lot less scary and personal. And there's something really amazing about that. So I just thank all of you who show up, and at any given time, it's always the perfect group of people. And I hope to see you guys on one of these again soon. You can unmute and say goodbye.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks,
Bye.
guys. Have a beautiful day. Bye.